Welcome back to Sail to Sleep. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most chilling maritime mysteries ever recorded. A ghost ship whose final distress call echoes through decades. A vessel that may never have existed at all. And radio signals that seem to pierce through time itself from the depths of the ocean floor. In the murky waters of the Strait of Malacca, where the Indian Ocean meets the South China Sea, a legend was born that would haunt sailors for generations. It's a tale whispered in port towns, debated by maritime historians, and feared by radio operators who've heard things they can't explain. This is the story of the Orang Medan, the man from Medan, and the distress calls that refuse to die. The date was either June 1947 or February 1948, depending on which account you believe. Multiple ships navigating the treacherous Strait of Malacca picked up a distress signal in Morse code. The message came through in fragments, desperate and haunting. SOS from Orang Medan, we float. All officers, including the captain, are dead in the chart room and on the bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. Then came a series of indecipherable dots and dashes, garbled transmissions that suggested whoever was sending the message was struggling. Finally, two words cut through the static with brutal clarity. I die. Then nothing but silence, as absolute as the grave. Two American vessels, the City of Baltimore and the Silver Star, along with British and Dutch listening posts, triangulated the signal's origin. The Silver Star, being closest, altered course immediately. What they found drifting on those tropical waters would become one of maritime history's most disturbing enigmas. The Orang Medan appeared intact, floating lazily under the brutal sun. No visible damage marred her hull. No distress flags flew from her masts. She simply drifted, silent as a tomb. When the Silver Star's rescue party boarded, they discovered a scene from a nightmare. Bodies littered the deck. The entire crew lay sprawled on their backs, faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. Mouths gaped open, eyes stared sightlessly at the sky. Arms reached upward, as if trying to ward off some invisible horror. Even the ship's dog lay dead, its face contorted in the same inexplicable fear. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of struggle or violence. The men had simply died, apparently in seconds, their final moments captured in those horrific expressions. The rescue party noted something else unsettling. Despite the sweltering tropical heat exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a bone-chilling cold emanated from somewhere deep within the ship. The air itself seemed wrong, thick with an otherworldly presence. Before any investigation could begin, smoke began rising from cargo hold number 4. The boarding party scrambled back to the Silver Star just as flames erupted. Moments later, the Orang Medan exploded with such violence that it lifted completely out of the water. Then it sank, taking whatever secrets it held into the depths, leaving behind only questions and that final haunting transmission. But here's where the story becomes even stranger. There are no official records of a ship named Orang Medan in any maritime registry. Not in the Netherlands, not in Indonesia, not anywhere. The Silver Star was a real vessel, but its logbooks contain no mention of any rescue attempt. No crew members ever came forward to corroborate the story. It's as if the ship itself was a ghost, materializing just long enough to send that desperate message before vanishing into maritime folklore. Yet the U.S. Coast Guard referenced the incident in their proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council in May 1952. The CIA mentioned it in documents from 1959. How could a ship that never existed command the attention of government agencies? How could multiple vessels and listening posts all receive the same distress call from a phantom? Some researchers believe the Orang Medan was smuggling dangerous cargo, perhaps chemical weapons left over from World War II, Japanese nerve gas, potassium cyanide, or sulfuric acid, substances that could kill an entire crew in seconds if they leaked. This would explain why no official records exist. The ship was operating in the shadows, carrying contraband that nations wanted to deny. The explosion that destroyed the vessel would have been a convenient way to erase all evidence. Others point to carbon monoxide poisoning from faulty engines, toxic fumes that would explain the sudden deaths and the crew's terrified expressions as they slowly suffocated, unable to understand what was killing them. But the earliest versions of the story date back to 1940, found in British newspapers during World War II, with different details and different locations. The tale evolved, changing with each retelling, acquiring new elements, losing others, transforming from possible truth into definite legend. What makes this story particularly unsettling is that it's part of a larger pattern. Ghost ships sending distress calls from beyond the grave are more common than you might think. In 1936, a ham radio operator named Gordon Cosgrave claimed to receive SOS messages from the Titanic and the Carpathia, 24 years after the disaster. He transcribed the messages and called the police, only to be mocked and dismissed. Yet his account was documented and remains unexplained. In the year 2000, the U.S. Coast Guard vessel Mackinac was sailing through heavy fog on Lake Michigan during the Grand Haven Coast Guard Festival. The crew heard distinct cries for help, a child's voice calling from the mist. They searched frantically, deploying rescue boats, but found nothing. Later, they realized they'd been sailing directly over the wreck of the Ironsides, a passenger steamer that sank in 1873, taking a young boy named Henry Valentine to his death. Was it a trick of the fog, or had they heard a distress call from 127 years in the past? These phantom transmissions aren't limited to old disasters. Modern submarine crews near the Titanic wreck site have reported strange interference on their radios, including what sound like SOS messages with no identifiable source. Ships passing over the site have observed unexplained orbs of light hovering above the water, as if the souls of the departed refuse to accept their fate. Scientists have proposed explanations. Atmospheric ducting can cause radio waves to travel impossibly large distances, potentially capturing and replaying old transmissions. Ionospheric conditions might create echo effects, lasting years or even decades. But these theories struggle to account for the specificity of the messages, the clarity with which they're sometimes received, or why they seem to originate from exact locations of tragedies. Perhaps the Orang Medan never existed as a physical vessel. Perhaps it was always a story, cobbled together from various maritime disasters, embellished by a journalist named Silvio Shirley, who saw profit in a good ghost story. Perhaps those distress calls were from other ships, their transmissions garbled and misinterpreted in the retelling. Or perhaps something darker is at work. Perhaps the boundary between past and present is thinner on the open ocean than we realize. Perhaps trauma and terror can imprint themselves on the very fabric of reality, creating echoes that resonate through time. Perhaps when sailors die in anguish, their final moments somehow become entrapped, replaying for anyone with the equipment to receive them. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet. Its depths remain largely unexplored, more mysterious than the surface of the moon. Countless vessels rest on its floor, their crews' final moments lost to history. How many of them still cry out in the darkness? How many distress calls go unheard, or are heard but dismissed as equipment malfunctions or atmospheric anomalies? The next time you hear about phantom radio signals or ghost ships, remember the Orang Medan. Remember that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are the ones where we can't even agree on what's real. A ship that may never have sailed, a crew that may never have lived, and distress calls that echo through the decades from a tragedy that might never have occurred. If you enjoyed this dark journey into maritime mystery, please like this video and subscribe to Sail to Sleep